you're the most influential libertarian in America?
According to Rolling Stone magazine. Now, my name is Chase Oliver. I do want to be the Libertarian candidate for president in 2024. The reason being is that I believe that our party actually has a real golden opportunity this year because the two-party system has rewarded us once again with Donald Trump versus Joe Biden, which nobody really wants. And actually, when Americans are polled, over 60% say they're now open to looking at a third-party candidate, which is the highest number we've ever seen in a long time.
Wow.
And I think as the third largest political party in the United States, we are poised to really make some gains in this election if we run a really professional and positive presidential campaign, because so much of what we see from the Democrats and Republicans is negativity. All Donald Trump is going to do is run talking about how much he hates Joe Biden. And all Joe Biden's going to do is run and talk about how much he hates Donald Trump. Neither of them are going to be talking about what America could be, what possibilities we have if we embrace the concepts and the philosophy of liberty, which is what I believe is the most powerful, positive political message that can exist in a nation like America. But I want to give you a little bit of background about who I am, where I came to this party, and what I'm doing as a presidential candidate. So I got started in politics as an anti-war activist. 9/11 happened when I was in high school, and I started seeing friends of mine sign up to go in the military and go fight in wars, particularly the war in Iraq that I knew was based on cherry-picked intelligence from the CIA, and we lied ourselves into that war, and I was outraged by that. So I took to the streets and became a citizen activist, and because I did not know about the Libertarian Party and George W. Bush was a Republican, I became a Democrat. Now I'm from Georgia, y'all. I'm a Democrat I was a Democrat who liked guns. I was a Democrat who hated taxes, but I was a Democrat. And I marched alongside the anti-war movement for years. And in 2008, we had a primary in the party between Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. And I said, Hillary Clinton is Dick Cheney in a dress. Barack Obama is making all these promises. I'm going to close Gitmo. We're going to end the wars. We're going to stop the drones. I will unconditionally meet with any world leader. That's what he said. And that excited me because diplomacy to me was very important. And he got elected and we all celebrated. Yay, yes we did. And then he didn't. He didn't do any of the stuff that the anti-war movement had basically ushered him to do. And that pushed me out of the Democratic Party and made me politically homeless for a little while. Until 2010. And I was at the Atlanta Pride Festival. If you're not aware, I'm LGBT, no big deal. But I was there, and so was the Libertarian Party of Georgia. They had a tent there, and I was literally walking through, and I see it. I'm like trying to read what it says, like Librarian Party, what is this? And I see a guy, and he sees me. He catches me looking, and he goes, "Get over here. Get over." I see you looking at me. Get over here. And that man was a guy named John Mons. He was running for governor in Georgia, and he said, I want you to know why I'm here. The Republican candidate for governor is not here because he actively campaigns against your community. He uses your community to get his voters out because he likes to campaign against you and against your rights. Now the Democrats, they love to pay you guys lip service, but their candidate for governor is not here either because he's scared to get a picture of him with a rainbow flag in the background because he knows he'll lose votes in the rural counties and he needs those suburban voters. I'm here on principle. You have the right to self-expression and the right to be who you want to be so long as you're not harming another person. And so I'm here, I don't care if I gain or lose any votes. And then he said, now what's most important to you as a voter? And I'll never forget it. I said, I oppose the war on terror and the war in Iraq with every fiber of my being. And he said, welcome home. This is where you belong. Come in this tent and let's connect your anti-war views with the philosophy of liberty. He didn't gatekeep me on the door. He didn't say, wait, have you read Mises or Hayek? How do you feel about this? What do you feel about this social issue? He just said, come on in the door. Come in the door and we're going to connect your anti-war view, whatever your view is that's important, with the greater view of liberty. Well, that's the kind of campaign I'm going to run for president. I ran for Senate in 2022. A statewide race. Knocked on 3,000 doors myself, and that's in addition to what my volunteers had done. Got out every day knocking on doors and doing events. And that was the most expensive U.S. Senate race in history. My opponents combined spent $250 million. $250 million, between $20 and $25 per vote that they got.
Oh my gosh.
I spent $20,000, the price of a used car, earned 81,000 votes. So a fraction of what they spent. And in doing so, I forced a runoff of the most expensive election in U.S. history, Senate race. And I put the Libertarian Party's name all over the news and got national attention for our party. Now, if I did that with $20,000 and my own feet underneath me, imagine the kind of movement I could create with the entire national party behind me. And with my initial fundraising is $5 million for this race through November. I know I can get that done. I know I can get more money than Joe Jorgensen. Right now, we are poised to be near the $100,000 mark, which is more than any other candidate in the Libertarian Party has raised pre-nomination, certainly in this race. Some other candidates have put a lot of their own money in, and with that, they have not won a straw. They've won one straw poll to my 10. I've been in primaries all over the state. I've traveled all over the country. This is the 50th state I have visited, and it's not because I was not, keen to get here. Trust me, I wanted to get to Hawaii. I am very excited to be here. It's my first time ever in the state. The state is beautiful. The people are lovely, and the reason why I traveled to all 50 states before the nomination is because I wanted to show libertarians the kind of energy and enthusiasm I'm willing to put in this race. If I'm willing to hit all 50 before we're even nominated, imagine the kind of energy I'm going to put into it as our nominee. And no Libertarian candidate for president has ever campaigned in all 50 states until tonight, because this is my campaign event in the 50th state. And I want you guys to be proud of the fact that you're part of something. You're part of breaking a glass ceiling for this party that should have been broken, frankly, a long time ago.
You said no candidate ever been to all 50 states before?
Ever, all 50 states.
That's cool.
Not Gary Johnson, not Joe Jorgensen, not Ron Paul, not Ed Clark. All great people.
Ed Clark did come here.
He did come here,
Roger McBride too, I believe.
Yeah.
but none
Harry
have visited
Brown
all
came
50.
here.
See, some of the best Libertarian candidates for president seem to have come to Hawaii, right? Because Harry Brown was a great candidate, Ed
Yep.
Clark was a great
Yep,
candidate,
Yep.
and I want to be a great
Especially
candidate.
with all of operas. We had such a good time talking about opera.
So the last thing I do want to tell you all about my background is I worked for about 6 years in the logistics industry. I worked for a company called Hapag Lloyd. They're a maritime shipper moving goods from one part of the world.
A really great article that we quoted in the Grassroots Institute newsletter about the Jones Act.
They're great. And that's exactly why I wanted to bring up my logistics history, is because if you have me as your candidate for president, you will have somebody who will absolutely 100% be speaking out against the Jones
I
Act.
think that's entered the Overton window, by the way. I think that issue is a good one for a national campaign.
Well, it's good for a national campaign, and it's good for a campaign that can hope to earn votes in Hawaii. You have the highest cost of living in the entire country. And that's not just because you're an island state.
Right.
It is directly caused by the Jones Act. It is directly caused by the fact that we created this protectionist policy in the 1920s. I can't say the 20s anymore because we're in the 20s now. The 1920s, that has been a complete and total failure. It has only led to an increased cost of living on the islands, which has led to increased poverty on the islands, which is an issue I know this state has to deal with. Trust me. Not everybody is living on beachfront property in multi-million-dollar homes or lovely homes just like this one. There's a lot of people who could do with a lower cost of living in this state. And as a Libertarian candidate for president, I will be a messenger of that we will do away with the protectionist policies that make it more expensive to live in a beautiful state like Hawaii. Because you guys shouldn't have to struggle to live in such a great place. But that being said, I'm nearly pro-choice on everything, as I believe a good libertarian should be. And my elevator pitch to folks is this: if you're not committing force, fraud, coercion, theft, or violence, your life is your life, your body is your body, your business is your business, and your property is your property. It's not mine, and it's not the government's, and if I'm elected, I'll make sure it stays that way. I also got to participate in this debate with Senator Raphael Warnock when I ran for U.S. Senate in Herschel Walker's empty podium because he was too scared to come debate a Libertarian. So I got to one-on-one debate a sitting U.S. senator, and I took him to the mat. I got a lot of calls from Republicans the next day going, man, I wish Herschel could debate Warnock like you just did. I'll never forget one day I was on a flight heading to Seattle, and there was a church group. They were gonna go to Seattle to Alaska, and I'm talking to the chaperones, you know, and this young man comes up to me, and he goes, "Are you Chase Oliver?" I said, "Yeah, I am. Why? Are you the government? What's going on?" And he said, "Well, I just want you to know I'm 18 years old, and you're the first person I ever voted for because I saw your debate with Senator Warnock, and you did a really good job. You inspired me to get out and vote." So I know I can do well in a debate. I know people have come out and voted for me because they saw me in a debate. And I did the free and equal debate just a few weeks ago with Lars, another Libertarian. He made the debate stage. And Jill Stein of the Green Party, Jasmine Sherman of the Unicorn Party.
Really?
Yes. The reason, I'm convinced that the reason why they called it the Unicorn Party is because their policies are completely make-believe and not at all realistic to the real world. And then we had Claudia de la Cruz of the People's Party for Socialism and Liberation. True hardcore Marxists. So it was an odd room to be in.
What about Vernon Supreme or whatever his name is?
Vermin Supreme. Well, you know, Vermin, he ran for the party 4 years ago. I have a lot of respect for Vermin Supreme. He's not my style. You know, I don't wear a boot on my head. You know, I don't wear multiple ties. But I appreciated the mirth and the joy that he brought to the campaign. He's a very nice man. The first time I ever met him was at the 2020 Georgia convention, and they're announcing it's lunchtime. And Joe Jorgensen goes, "Oh, well, if anybody wants some pizza," my campaign ordered a bunch of pizzas for everybody. And Adam Kokesh goes, "Well, I'll make sandwiches on my bus if anybody wants to come on my bus." And Lincoln Chafee goes, "Well, we're eating at this restaurant over here. We can always add another to the reservation." And Vermin stands up and goes, "I will be smoking cannabis in the parking garage." And I was already having a lunch date with Lincoln Chafee, but I knew exactly the path I was taking to get to that restaurant, and it involved me walking right through that parking garage to meet Vermin Supreme. By the way, I am somebody who consumes cannabis. I do not hide from that. I will not I will not run away from that. I believe in demystifying it. Cannabis should be no more controversial than a glass of wine or a beer. I was also hit by a car and ruptured 3 vertebrae in my neck and spine, and it does wonders to treat pain. My doctor tried to prescribe me opiates, and when I told him, "Hey, I have addiction in my family, I don't know if that's a good idea," he said, "Well, we live in Georgia, I can't prescribe you medical cannabis. But what I can tell you is it's non-habit forming, it works great for pain, and you can probably get it from your friend down the street for about the same price as you're gonna get these opiates I would prescribe you. So go ahead and do that." And it worked wonders for me. I tell people I'm anti-war to the core, and I mean it. I'm a peace candidate. I do not believe in any foreign aid of any kind, least of all military foreign aid that is going to kill so many innocent people in Gaza. Now, all of that. Now, I'll be frank. October 7th was abhorrent. It was terrible. It was disgusting. What you saw on October 7th was very, very terrible from Hamas. And I believe that Israel does have a right to respond. They do. If that happened in our neighborhoods, we would expect a response. Now, what is not a good response is to then airstrike all of Gaza and to kill tens of thousands of people, because and many Israelis will say the same thing. There are a lot of voices for peace and ceasefire in Israel, and they understand that killing so many people, creating so much collateral damage, tens of thousands of kids, it makes it less safe to be an Israeli, because it further inflames tensions in the Palestinian territories. It further inflames the Arab neighbors and the people and their proxies. It makes it less safe to be your average Israeli with what Israel is doing right now. And we need to be the friend in the room that tells them this. Just like I wish somebody had come to us on 9/12/2001, some of our international neighbors and been like, "Listen, we're all one country. We're all one, right? We're with you." But a worldwide war on terror without defined parameters or conditions for victory, or really who you're fighting, will not stabilize the world. It will actually make the world less stable and increase anti-American sentiment around the world. I wish somebody had told us that on 9/12/2001. We should have been the people to tell this to Israel on October 8th, 2023. We should have been the people to do that.
Trump keep encouraging them. He's finish it up. So like, finish it already.
And Netanyahu is
Yes.
and Netanyahu is continuing this because for several reasons. One, the second the war stops, the investigations as to how October 7th happens begins, and he ran on "I will keep Israel protected and keep them safe," and how the Israeli intelligence services missed what was happening, that will be investigated. And he was already going through corruption stuff anyways, and so he's exacerbating this war to maintain his grip. Other areas where I'm going to differentiate myself from the Republican Party. I am an absolute believer in completely ending the drug war, 100%. Decriminalize all drugs for adults to consume if they wish to. Absolutely. We need to be more like the nation of Portugal. Portugal had the highest HIV had the highest IV drug use rate in all of Western Europe. Because of this, they had the highest HIV rates and highest hepatitis rates in the continent. Now, they had an option in the 2000s. Are we going to crack down on our population the way the United States does, or are we going to do something different? And I thank God they did something different, because it showed that decriminalization works. Drug use rates have plummeted. Addiction rates have plummeted in that country. Now, they still have higher rates of HIV and hepatitis than most of the continent, but that's because people live longer with those conditions than they used to. It's not a death sentence the way it used to be. But new infection rates are lower than the rest of the continent. We can do this kind of thing here in the United States where we have real addiction problems.
How has Portugal dealt with it? I'm not...
So one of the things they do is if you're caught, if you're using open and public hard drugs, instead of throwing you in jail or writing you a ticket or a fine, they write you an appointment to go seek a counselor, to go talk to a counselor, to talk about your options. Now, they have state-provided rehabs. I believe if a local community wants to do that, that can be funded at the local level, but I believe it's best funded through charity, through mutual and direct aid. And if we got ourselves to that, we could actually fund much better rehab programs than what the state would provide. But they provide those avenues. The other thing that they do that curbs it, overdoses. How many people die from fentanyl in this country because they thought they were taking a Xanax? They thought they were doing a little heroin, and it ended up being a lot of fentanyl in the heroin. How many times does that happen? A lot. That's where a lot of these fentanyl overdoses come from. Well, in Portugal, you can take your drug to a pharmacy, and for a small fee, they will test your drugs and tell you exactly what's in it. This has led to better quality, honestly, of drugs in Portugal, less overdoses because of that, but also, more informed use.
A lot of anti-drug warriors don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
They don't want to hear that.
Well, that's because they believe in absolutionism. They believe in abstinence or nothing, not understanding that safer usage is actually going to save lives. I mentioned that I always shout out this group called Shred the Stigma Oklahoma. My friend Drew Cook runs it. They give out free Narcan, fentanyl testing strips, clean pipes and needles to the users. Now, they don't do it because they're like, keep smoking crack, keep doing heroin. They do it because they know that this will lead to reduction in IV drug diseases, but also you create that layer of trust with somebody. The first time you talk to them, you meet them in a park and they're giving you a fake name. The second time you meet them at the local bodega near their house and they've given you the real name. The third time they're like, just meet me at my house. And you're now in the home with the addict. And then when they want to get sober, they know somebody who was a former user who's been providing them with safe usage, who will help them get the help they need. That's the kind of trust. And in the meantime, his Narcan in just under 2 years has saved like over 700 lives. So there's 700 people who would probably be dead otherwise, but somebody took the time to hand out free Narcan to addicts. That's the kind of direct and mutual aid. Those are the kinds of libertarian stories that I think a campaign for president needs to be talking about more. Because we can't just say, legalize all the drugs and it'll sort itself out. We have to show how it will sort itself out, how we can have solutions without government. And if we can't provide those answers, well, then we're asking people to take a leap of faith. And a leap of faith, when we're a party that's, the chances of winning are much more slight than the Democrats or Republicans, that's a large leap to take. So I think help them out, provide them with the real answers. The importation of fentanyl and other drugs like this, I don't know how to stop it, to be frank, because working in the industry, I can tell you, at best, we're searching 2% of all cargo that comes in. And that's on our best day. And that's when Customs and Border Patrol is really on the job, which I can tell you is not most days. So at best, we're searching 1 out of 100 containers, usually on a good day, 1 to 2. And we're not going to catch all the drugs that are coming in. There's just no way to just stop it all. So we have to stop it at the use level and at the individual user. and providing that education and resources to keep themselves safe. But also, you know, part of that's also going to come from like parents educating their kids about like what's going on in the world. Like, we cannot hide these things from people. This is why I don't believe the absolutionist abstinence model works, because that only brings about a generation of uninformed kids who are then going to get hooked on drugs. I'm from the millennial generation of, if you're going to drink a beer, you're going to do it under my roof. You know, that was kind of the prevailing attitudes when I was like 16, 17 years old. Hey, if you're going to drink, do it under my roof. Don't be stupid. Nobody drive. I'm taking the keys. And that was kind of the way I came up. You know what? I did all right. And I also learned to be responsible. I didn't go into the world blind at 18 or 21, not knowing anything. And I think part of that is we have to stop being such helicopter parents and like trying to say everything is so dangerous in the world. We have to let kids experience the world a little bit.
Absolutely.
So there's no clear answer there. That's going to come from a cultural change, not a political change. So education is very important to me. Now, when I was at the Iowa State Fair, I probably spoke to like a couple thousand people throughout those 4 days I was on the ground. And let me just tell you, most of them weren't libertarians. Most of them were Democrats or Republicans or independents or whatever. But the way I communicated to a lot of them was this, because a lot of them came up with their kids. And so raise your hand here if you're a parent. I'm not one, I'm an uncle. But if you're a parent, raise your hand. Anybody who's a parent, parents? I bet all of you unconditionally love your kids. You would take a bullet for your kids. I know my mom at 70 years old would take a bullet for me if she had to. That's unconditional love. Now, if you have that kind of unconditional love, by their very nature, you have a vested interest in seeing your child survive, thrive, succeed. You're going to be a great advocate for your kid because you have that love for them. You know who does not have that kind of love for your kids? A bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. or in Honolulu.
He'll draft him and send him off to war.
They don't know your kid. They don't know what makes them special. They don't know the hardships they've had to face. They don't know the triumphs that they've gotten to celebrate in their lives. But you do. So let's take power out of their hands and put it in your hands as a parent to decide your child's education, to decide your child's medical care, to decide your child's upbringing until they're a critical thinking adult. That's your job as a parent. Well, let's facilitate helping your job. And as far as education goes, I'm an absolute believer in choice in education. Now, I believe in the libertarian ideal of fully voluntarily funded education free from the state. I recognize that we're not anywhere near there. I believe a great way to transition ourselves to that is to create a marketplace in education. If the taxes that were being taken from our pockets are being funded education, fund the student, not the system. Give that money directly to the parent and students to spend that money where they want to go to school. Now, if you have a great public school system, you're probably going to keep sending your kids there because they already have the building, the logistics, the bus routes, all that stuff. You'll keep going there. But if you're growing up in like city of Atlanta, where I'm from, where the schools are so bad that the teachers and administrators were cheating on the standardized tests to get education funding because they were so bad at doing their job they had to lie on the tests. Well, as a parent, you might want better options for your kids. You might want to have more places to send them, and educational entrepreneurs will pop up in those places to provide better schools. Now, it's great for parents and students, but it's also great for educators. I have a lot of friends who are teachers. They went to school to become a teacher because they had a great teacher growing up, and they said, I want to be that great teacher for someone else. And they go to school, they get thousands and thousands of dollars in debt to get a job that doesn't pay a ton of money. They know that going in. And then they get a job at a public school and they're like, man, this sucks. This administration is terrible. They don't know anything about what goes on in a classroom. I could teach so much better if I could do X, Y, or Z. Well, in a world of education marketplace and free market of education, guess what? Those teachers will have much more opportunity to teach the way they want to teach. And if it's successful, it will be adopted by other teachers. And those who don't do a great job will either adapt to those better ways of teaching, or they'll stop getting money and they'll stop being teachers. That's the way we improve education for our kids and create a generation of lifelong learners and critical thinkers. And I believe you should send your kids where you want. And send your kids to the school that has your values. You know, whether that can be a religious or a parochial school, but it can also be a school like in Alabama. Alabama's a pretty conservative area. Well, there's a charter school there made for LGBTQ students who might feel persecuted or made fun of or picked on in the schools that they're at that are a little bit more conservative. There's a school for them. There's a school for everybody. There should be a school and a safe place for every child to learn. And freedom in education provides for that. And it does away with a lot of the culture war issues that we're facing in our schools today. Send your kid to woke academy or unwoke academy. I don't care. I'll send my kids, or my nephews and nieces will go where their parents want them to go. And the schools that do well will succeed, and the schools that don't won't. And it'll sort itself out. That has had to fight.
Free markets function in any sphere.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really important that they should be allowed to function in education unfettered.
And I do want to talk one more piece about education. Student loans. For my generation, it is a crisis. So many people, and not even just in my generation, Gen Xers are also still feeling it. Gen Zers are about to start feeling it. Student loans are a major crisis in this country. I'm the only libertarian candidate that has policy to directly address the student loan crisis in a way that is libertarian, in a way that does not add one dime to the deficit, in a way that gets government out of this. So 90% of our student loans in this country are backed by the federal government. Well, that has artificially increased the price of higher education. Banks are willing to give money out to just about anybody for any reason to go to any college. And that's just not working. So if I were president, I would ask the Congress to send me a bill that does a couple things. One, makes all currently held government student loans interest-free as of today. Let these people pay down the principal. Make it payable, let them pay it down, and wipe those off our balance sheet. Second, pair that with no new government-backed loans after the next 6 months. That gives the banking industry time to transition to a full free market education system for loans. And then 3, you do make student loans dischargeable under bankruptcy for those who are in extreme conditions when it involves itself. And how do you account for the lost interest? Because the interest is money we would be adding to the Treasury. Well, I believe that the student loan crisis, by its very nature, is an issue of national security because of how big it is. So we're going to close some bases overseas to pay for the income that we lost from those interest rates, because the Pentagon's going to have to pull their fair share too. And that is a fully libertarian plan to get the government out of student loans, to provide some relief for people who are under the loans right now, and to bring free market economics back to higher education.
For the state of education, do you think the Department of Education should exist? And also, yes or no, do you think there are other agencies that should also be potentially taken out if they're not effective?
DOE needs to go. Like, Department of Education has just shown itself not to work. We've increased the amount of funding year over year. Ever since the Department of Education has started, we have not seen the increase in the reading and writing skills of our students. And it has basically created this cycle where they take money out of the states, and to get the money back, for every dollar, you now have $1.10 worth of regulation that's been added to it. And so now it's putting pressure on the states in some cases too. So I would eliminate the DOE entirely, bring that back to states to determine how they handle their own education system. Ideally, again, funding students, not systems, but that'll work itself out among the states. And then, yeah, there's a lot of other agencies I would want to eliminate. The first one would be, peeling the layer of the onion. You go with that first layer, which is the newest bureaucracy, which is the Department of Homeland Security. So much of what DHS does is either unneeded, TSA, ICE, see many other agencies, or it could be folded into the Department of Justice or the Defense Department. They don't have to have a whole separate agency of security theater to make us feel good, because that's what it was. It was created in the wake of 9/11 to say, listen guys, don't be scared anymore. Big Brother's here. We're going to take care of you. And if you look at the failure rates of TSA, like I can tell you right now, I bought the Henson razor. They are not sponsoring my campaign, but they're a wonderful razor. They use traditional straight razor blades in their blade handle. I didn't read the fine print on their website that says if you want to fly with our razors, you need to check your baggage. So I was just flying through with straight razors. It was about the 5th flight before they caught me. And so I'm thinking to myself, well, I made it 5 flights before you guys caught these razor blades. That means 1 out of every 5, you have a 20% success rate of catching razor blades in people's bags. If you look at the TSA rates when they test themselves, like 80% of the handguns that they test to get through security. 4 out of every 5 handguns? Are you kidding me? That should be the easiest thing to see in a metal detector, like in an x-ray machine. It looks like a gun. Maybe I should search that guy's bag. But they still fail at that. And then you look at agencies like ICE that are part of DHS. ICE is one of the most abusive agencies in this country. You see the human rights abuse that we have on our southern border in the mainland. I went to Arizona and Texas, and I saw it for myself. So much of that is caused by the government. So I support an Ellis Island immigration. Come through a port of entry, just declare who you are, because that way if you're wanted for an extradition crime, we can extradite you back to where you belong. Otherwise, come on in, get to work. We need the jobs, or we need the labor. We have the jobs. We need the people to work them. And I hate that a couple of other Libertarian candidates took this, because when we were in Minnesota, they went to go eat lunch together at the hotel restaurant. There was no hotel staff. They could only do to-go orders because there wasn't enough staff to staff the restaurant. We need people to work jobs.
About the Fed.
We'll end it, obviously. I'm a Ron Paul guy. I think we should audit and then end the Fed. I think the way you end the Fed is by making the public aware of what the Fed does, so we first have to audit it. I would like to get our monetary policy back to something that's backed by something finite. Gold, silver, saffron, coconuts, I don't know. Just pick whatever it is. We'll tack our money to it, right? And create some sort of value to it. And then, of course, I support competing currencies with the dollar. Bitcoin and other currencies that are allowing us to fully separate our money from the state. It's very cool. But with that, we also have to make sure we absolutely 100% oppose CBDCs, central bank digital currency. If we allow that to come through, they will eliminate the paper dollar. They will start moving cash away. We will become a cashless society. A cashless society is a society without privacy. One where the government can determine every single cent you spend, and if they don't like what you're doing, they can turn it off. I don't want that kind of world. I would rather have a world where I can stuff money in the mattress if I want to, like a paranoid person. Not really paranoid these days, if you think about it. But yeah, absolutely, our monetary policy is a wreck. Somebody asked my opinion on Richard Nixon the other day, and I said, he is one of the worst presidents we've had, if for no other reason than he took us off the gold standard. But also lots of other stuff that he did. But if there's one thing he should have been impeached for, it was that. It's the feds. Hey man, I'm not gonna lie, we had helicopters flying over me when I was shooting guns in the desert yesterday, but that was because they were putting out a fire. I don't know. Privacy is a huge concern. I oppose any extra constitutional courts and investigations. Get a warrant. It should not be that hard to get a warrant. And we just had a FISA vote in the House, y'all. A FISA vote that would have said, you know what? You have to get a warrant. You have to get a warrant to spy on people who are talking to people overseas. And it failed 212 to 212, tie vote in the House. Wow. If you've never thought that one vote matters, well, on that one it did. How different would our world be today if there was a libertarian in the United States House of Representatives that could have stood up and voted against or for this restriction on FISA? How better would the world be? It's important, and it's something that is literally on a razor thin edge at this point. And Speaker Johnson flipped. He used to be an anti-FISA guy, and then all of a sudden he became pro-FISA. He said, well, I got into the confidential meetings and I was told things. What things were you told, Speaker Johnson? Was it, hey, we have this information about you. We have these photos of you. We have the websites that you've been visiting. You know, because he famously has a website tracker that his son can see everything he goes to, and he can see every website his son goes to. That's a little weird, just gonna say. I don't want my dad knowing my browser history. I don't want to know my dad's browser history. But yeah, we absolutely have to defend privacy. Yes.
Well, they're already saying that about Robert Kennedy Jr.
Oh yes, the wasted vote spoiler argument.
Right.
You're wasting your vote. You're just a spoiler. These are the things we hear all the time.
About candidates, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, you're wasting your vote. You're wasting your vote and you're a spoiler. You're wasting your vote and you're a spoiler. Okay, well, let me first off to the wasted vote argument. If you're voting for someone you don't really believe in, you're wasting your vote. That's a wrong thing to do. And, you know, what can I tell you? If you want to waste your vote on Donald Trump and Joe Biden, go right ahead. But I think it's time that we pick somebody else.
It's always like the lesser of the two evils, but really once they get elected, one is really...
It's just the evil of evils.
It was just as bad as the other one, if not worse.
Well, it's the evil of evils. Oh, Biden. Oh, Trump's border policy is a human rights abuse. Continues the border policies. Trump's economic protectionist is so terrible for our economy. Continues the protectionist policies.
Yeah.
It's the same old song and dance. But then there's the spoiler argument. You're a spoiler, Chase. You're a spoiler. Let me tell you right now. First off, you need to understand, I'm not a spoiler. I'm a participant. I'm participating in the system that has been provided to us. Okay? Secondly, you cannot spoil something that is already rotten. And that is the two-party system. You can't spoil that. It's already rotted. Now, I'm participating in the process that's been given to me, which is plurality voting in most cases. All right? And that has people under 50% getting the vote. And they call that a spoiled election. It is a spoiled election. I don't think you should be under 50% of the vote deciding for 100% of the people. That's not even tyranny of the majority. That's tyranny of the minority. All right? So we need a better system. Rank choice voting, approval voting, star voting, whatever it is, something that's better than plurality. Even a runoff is better than plurality, even though it costs millions of dollars to run a whole other election. But anything better than plurality.
Ranked voting is runoffs.
Yes, instant runoffs. But any of those things are better than plurality. But guess what? Guess who can't give you that? Chase Oliver, the Libertarian who's not serving in office right now. Guess who can? The Democrats and Republicans in your state house. They're spoiling your election because they refuse to give you a way to vote for your first choice and make sure whoever gets elected has at least nominally over 50% of the vote. They're the spoilers. So when people come to you as a libertarian and you say, voting for your candidate's going to spoil the election, say the Democrats and Republicans in your state house already spoiled the election by not giving you ranked choice voting or plurality voting. I'm speaking my mind. I'm voting my conscience. I'm a participant in the system, not a spoiler. Democrats and Republicans are spoilers. Never, ever let them make you a spoiler. They are. And as long as we go into the election with that mindset and explain that to every voter, enough people will understand and we will start having more ranked choice voting and approval voting across the country, like we have in Alaska and in Maine and in New York City and in a lot of other localities across the country. Let's spread that message far and wide. And when I did that, when I forced the runoff in the Senate race, all I talked about, they go, who are you going to endorse, Chase? Warnock or Walker? And I said, I'm endorsing ranked choice voting. Well, who are you going to vote for, Chase? I'm voting for ranked choice voting. And it went from 5% support in my state to over 30% support in my state. So when we put the message out there loud and clear and we spoil enough of their elections, they'll give it to us. Now, the third way to run for president, positive, aspirational messaging that aspires to what we can be if we work to our greatest ideals. That's the type of campaign, love him or hate him, that Barack Obama ran and won a lot of votes and made a lot of history doing that. And it broke through to a lot of new voters and a lot of low information voters because they liked the way he sent the message out. And so if we're going to break through as libertarians, it's about having that positive communication style because I believe our policies are great. You said the red meat there, a lot of it makes sense logically, but we have to hit people's heartstrings. We have to emotionally, and the biggest stereotype we have to break as libertarians is that we're selfish. We don't care about other people. You only care about yourself, libertarians. You're so selfish. You only care about the individual, yourself. That could not be further from the truth. Our message is one of empathy. You can live your life any way you want. Just do it in peace. That's an empathic message. You know what? We don't need a governing structure to form our community together. We'll do that independently. We'll do that ourselves because we love our neighbor and we love our community. That's a powerful empathic message, but one that gets obfuscated by the two-party system insisting that we are somehow selfish. Well, if I'm our candidate for president, the tone and tenor of this campaign, we want a positivity and asking people to aspire to be something greater than what we are today. And when you give those people that kind of encouragement, that's how you break through that low information voter. And then you find their one issue and you bring them into the tent, just like I talked about earlier. And leads me right into another thing that I love to talk about. Pop culture libertarianism. Okay? How many people here have read Mises on Liberalism? 3. Okay, how many people here have watched Star Wars? Like everyone's hand should be everyone's hand should be going up, right? Star Wars is a story about a ragtag group of freedom fighters who are taking down an authoritarian empire.
I just watched that with my 6-year-old grandson the other night, the first two.
Good, make him want to be Han Solo, because Han Solo's a libertarian. He's a smuggler. He's a smuggler who open carries, and his best friend is a guy named Chewie. So like that is a lot of libertarians out there, right?
For the Empire or the Rebels. He was
Yes.
like doing his own thing.
Now, and I was once asked, what's a great book to get my teenage daughter into libertarianism? And I said, oh God, if anyone ever says, Ayn Rand, please run from that person, because that is a very dense book. You don't want to read any Ayn Rand. You don't want The Fountainhead.
Yeah.
You don't want.
Personally, I was a deep libertarian before I read any Ayn Rand.
So, the book that I recommend though.
But it's not a good place to start.
No, she's a horrible writer. I love her to objection, but I don't like her writing.
Yeah.
But the book that I recommend is the Hunger Games novels,
Oh.
because the main character is a teenage girl, and his teenage daughter can identify with Katniss Everdeen. And spoiler alert, at the end of the books, Katniss Everdeen rejects both fascism and communism. She literally shoots an arrow through the heart of the communist state at the end of the third book.
Next time they ask you that question, you can recommend the Adventures of Jonathan Galvin.
I will take it, sir.
Have you not seen that one yet?
I have not, but you know what? I get books given to me. I have now read so many books. As I read a book, 300-page book about the Branch Davidians. It was written in the 90s because somebody who was an old school libertarian in Texas gave me, here's my book. And I was like, all right, I'm going to read about the Davidians. I will read this.
That is my book, and it's in 57 languages. We're making a cartoon out of it now, so that it will be
It's had
more
numerous
readily adopted.
theatrical plays. And
I'll have to look it up.
Famous old book.
Yes, sir. We'll see. Pop culture libertarianism. You'll do more to get through people with a book or a song or a movie than you will a thick economic tome. As much as I love our libertarian economists, we're a special breed who likes to read those books.
Well, I'm not trying to give you. I'm
No.
not trying to grill you or prove your deep libertarianism. Right?
Oh, no.
What about Ford and Liberty by Rothbard?
I've not read it, but I would.
That's a really good.
It was my first introduction to
Honestly,
libertarian.
when I say it, by the way, when I say I'm reading, most of the time I'm listening. I actually have dyslexia and dysgraphia, fun fact about me. So reading and writing is very difficult for me. If you haven't noticed, I love to talk and
Well,
do
you're really good at
oral presentations as opposed to reading and writing because
Chase,
it's difficult.
If you were to be elected, or even now,
Mhm.
who do you have policy advisors, people you lean on for
Mhm.
insight into certain, and do you connect with the Cato Institute or any of those other groups like that?
I know a couple of folks from think tanks, but my policy director is a guy named Tarnell Brown. He's an economist out of Liberty University. Great, couldn't ask for a better named school. But he is a wonderful policy director. He is whip smart, and he was my campaign manager for my Senate run. And he said, I don't want to be your campaign manager for president, but I will help you write your policy because I'm very good at doing that. If you look at my campaign platform, that is direct collaboration between me and him sitting down and kind of hammering out details.
Maybe it's Cornell Brown.
Tarnell Brown. Tarnell Brown. Yes, and I never met him in person until after he was already my campaign manager. He's a pretty reclusive guy, but he finally came out because I was doing Juneteenth campaigning in Atlanta. Tarnell is black. I am not. And he said, I cannot send you as a white guy by yourself into Juneteenth. Nobody will pay attention to you. They will go, who is this guy trying to take our holiday and make it into a political thing? And I thought he was crazy. It was like, Tarnell, I have grown up in Atlanta my whole life. Like, I have always been a white boy who's comfortable being in a room full of black folks. Like, no problem. I'll be fine. It's Atlanta. Well, I'm there, Juneteenth, and I'm like, please take my rat card. Please, 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 please listen to me. No one listening to me. Tarnell shows up in a Chase for Senate shirt. He grabs the rat cards out of my hand. He walks right over and he goes, hey, man, check out my friend Chase. And he's like, thanks, man. The guy walks right on. I'm like, thank you, Tarnell. But that's the only time I ever met him in person because he's such a recluse. He doesn't like to. He has immunocompromised disease, so he doesn't like to leave the house very often. But he's brilliant. But yes, there's also folks in the Cato. Alex Nawardesh from Cato. I sat down and had a nice little hour and a half long conversation with him about immigration. It's probably one of the best resources on immigration policy from a libertarian perspective you're ever going to find. I'm willing to work with just about anybody in the space. And I think after I'm the nominee, willing, we have a great slate of candidates. You mentioned some of the other, we mentioned some of the other ones earlier. I want them to join my team too. I want this to be a unified effort. I want to be a unifying part of the party, by the way. That's another thing. We have had a lot of infighting in the Libertarian Party. I don't know how far removed y'all are in Hawaii from it, because you guys are geographically removed from a lot of it. But there's been a lot of infighting in our party the last few years.
What's the battle going on between the Mises and the Cato people?
The Mises and non-Mises. That's just, But here's the deal, you guys. Infighting is reductive. It leads to lower returns. It leads to lower membership, lower donors, and I'm not going to participate in it. Now, I'm not going to say I've never participated in infighting amongst libertarians, because let he who is without sin cast the first stone. I'm not perfect. But as far as being a presidential candidate, you will have seen, if you look at my messaging, my social media, I stay away from the infighting as much as possible. So much so that even on my private Slack channels and my campaign, if people start bad-mouthing other candidates, I'm quick to jump in and say, no, this is not the place to bad-mouth other candidates. You do that on your Twitter or your Facebook or whatever. This is here we would come to work for this campaign, and I don't want to hear it. And so I'm trying to encourage a positive atmosphere so we can grow our party and not exclude people and not fight with each other. Let's fight the state as opposed to fighting other libertarians. It's kind of my philosophy. Oh yeah, well I imagine we opened up so early that Trump said we were being irresponsible. So,
Not to forget that it was under Trump that all that started.
yes, and so first to address, I think it's a legitimate thing to say that the National Party leadership did not communicate effectively enough opposing mandates and lockdowns. They stayed heavily on the personal responsibility messaging. Be personally responsible, which I actually think is a good message. But you have to pair that with also saying good ideas don't require force. We don't need the government to mandate these things. I believe you can make your own healthcare decisions. First off, I'm not a doctor. Do not take medical advice from me, because I'm not a doctor. Don't take medical advice from any politicians, even the ones that are doctors, because they're politicians first. And this is why, that's exactly what I'm talking about, is technology is great until government gets involved. Government censorship of social media is bad. I think, and honestly, I think it led to a further blowback, honestly. People who, if the government was trying to censor information, all it did is create further distrust of the government. It actually blew back in their face. But I'm somebody who absolutely opposes lockdowns and mandates. I had a family member, friend of the family. Everybody's a cousin in Tennessee, we all know. But, I had a friend of the family. She loved flowers growing up. That was her thing. She could identify any flower, and she started a flower shop. She was a florist. It's her own small business. Well, COVID happened, and flower shops are not essential. So her business was shut down. It was locked down. She couldn't work. And her business did not survive COVID. Now, the Lowe's down the road stayed open, including the garden center that sold flowers. They could sell flowers because they also sold hardware and other things that were deemed essential. Well, her business closed down. Well, where does she work today? She works at the garden center at Lowe's. Yes, so last little bit of salesmanship. If you do want to support this campaign, we do need your help to do that. We do have a fundraising, end of the month we do have to report our fundraising deadline. So if you are able to give tonight, if you go to votechaseoliver.com/donate, it's right there on the homepage. Of course, like any good politician, when you go to my homepage, it asks you to donate right there. We would greatly appreciate it. It is what allows me to be a 50-state candidate for this party, to travel around and do this work. Also, I have some bumper stickers back there if anybody would like a bumper sticker, as well as there are things called freedom cards back there. They're blank cards asking the question, what does freedom mean to you? If anybody would like to fill out that card, I'm trying to get 1,000 freedom cards by the end of the National Convention. I'm over 300 so far. I know all of you will not be able to make it to the National Convention, but we'd like as many Hawaiian contributions to the freedom cards as possible. So please fill one out if you got a little time here tonight.
Can we mail that to you?
You can. You can mail it to me. There's a mailing address on my website, so feel free to grab it. If it takes you a little while to answer, you can send it to me. I do check the P.O. box all the time.
PayPal?
To pay, and you can PayPal.
You have PayPal?
I do have PayPal. You can pay through PayPal if you want to donate. Absolutely. But I do want to say thank you very much, particularly Ken and Lee, for opening your home to all of us.
Thank you very much.